Hi everyone, thanks for joining me again on the Neil Oliver channel. I just wanted to catch everyone up with where I think we are. That was my intention. I cannot help but state my absolute chin on chest bemusement with so much that I'm seeing around me at the moment. I'll get into it. There's something that I've been lingering on from social media about how it feels like in the recent past the real world ended and we were somehow tricked into a false world, an unreal world. That's how it feels. So I want to get into all of that. Also, can I say that really this channel depends upon our patreon.com presence. If you want to see more of this content, if you want to see this channel continue, if not to grow, then go to patreon.com, look for me by name and sign up. Have to part with a little bit of cash, but you become a member of the family and you get access to everything that we've been assembling here over the last 3 or 4 years. Don't even know how long it's been. I'll hope to see you there. And I'm just wanting to follow up on that conversation that we're having on here. Lots of people involved, wondering what's coming next in light of what is unfolding still in the Middle East. I'm pretty sure we're looking at, energy lockdowns of one sort or another, all sorts of craziness. I can imagine us being told to, work from home, and the EU President Ursula von der Leyen has actually made a speech about how the cheapest energy is the energy you don't use, which is brilliant. I mean, that the cheapest food is the food you don't eat. Yeah, what a line. And I tell you what it was. I was scrolling through X, formerly known as Twitter, and I hit on this offering. I am fully convinced 2019 was the last normal year we ever had. Ever since then, it feels like the simulation broke. Everyone is constantly anxious. Time moves both way too fast and barely at all, and nothing actually feels real anymore. The world as we knew it is just gone, and we are all just pretending it's fine. That's from an account called Thriller the Gorilla. But if you look at the comments on it as well, I mean, apart from the fact that there's something very zeitgeisty about that state of mind, I would say, I feel like that. I read that and I think, yes, that is a large part of how I feel, that there was a point in the recent past when it feels like we flipped. The train on the tracks jumped at the points and jumped onto another track while we were all asleep, so to speak. And you kind of waking up with the jolt and everything you think looks roughly the same. You're living in the same house in the same town and you're doing the same job and whatever, but everything feels slightly wrong, or even a lot wrong. And what fascinates me is that this one puts it to 2019. I'm not so sure when I think it happened. As I say, if you look at the replies under that post, there's quite a lot of people saying no, it was actually 9/11 in 2001. That was the last, or the year before that event was the last real year we ever had. So different people place the jumping of the train onto the different tracks at a different point in time. But I don't think that matters so much as does that sensation that I think so many of us register. Everywhere you look, it's like a jump scare in a horror film. Things just keep coming at you that any one of them would have seemed extraordinary in any normal universe. But these things come at us multiples every day. Donald Trump, in amongst the many, frankly, bizarre posts that he has put up on his Truth Social platform, there's a recent one that I think he has subsequently taken down. I think he's actually removed it. But while it was up, and you can still see it, lots of people have screenshot it and whatever. It's an AI generated image of Donald Trump as Jesus laying hands on an ill man as though to heal him and bring him succor and comfort. And there's all sorts of heavenly choir and, angels and redemption all around the image. It's a bizarre image. And Donald Trump isn't even denying that he posted it. He's on camera saying, yeah, I did post it. However, I meant it as me in the costume of a doctor. I meant it. I was presenting myself as someone who helps people. And I do help people, he said. Lots of people. And really, it's only the fake news that could possibly construe it as me pretending that I'm Jesus. I just say, look at the image and decide for yourself what you think you're supposed to get from an image like that. And you think, this is the leader of the free world. This is the president of the United States. And this is how he's behaving in office. This is how he's behaving in office during a war. And this is the way that he's conducting himself. And as I say, in any other year of life, you would think that would be quite the milestone moment. But it's around all sorts of strangeness. There's plenty of footage online of the British boss of MI6, a woman called Blaise Metroelli. I think that's how you pronounce her second name. It's an unfamiliar surname to me, Blaise Metroelli. And it's footage of her attending, and she seems to be, when she notices that there's cameras trained on her, she does appear to try and cover her face with her hair, as though she's not entirely happy about being seen. She's attending the Bilderberg meeting. This one's held in a hotel in Washington, D.C.
What is the Bilderberg?
Well, a good question. What is the Bilderberg? It's a group. It was set up in the 1950s. I want to say 1954. It was held in the Bilderberg Hotel in Oosterbroek in the Netherlands. And it has met every year since. I think this is the 72nd meeting of the Bilderberg, and it's been known ever since as the Bilderberg Group. I looked up at random. I looked at the Guardian newspaper's coverage of the Bilderberg meeting in Washington, D.C. The 72nd meeting of the Bilderberg Group, the elite and secretive policy conference that is the long-time subject of endless conspiracy theories, was held at the weekend in Washington, D.C. A security cordon went up around the opulent Salamander Hotel for the notoriously media-shy summit, which was packed as ever with prime ministers, military leaders, tech billionaires, and the heads of giant investment companies. Bilderberg, which since the 1950s has been the intellectual engine room of NATO, took place this year at a time of immense crisis and uncertainty for the alliance. In recent weeks, with Trump threatening at every turn to withdraw from the paper tiger of NATO, the transatlantic defence industrial relationship, as it's called on the agenda, has reached a strained breaking point. Now, we're told all the time that we live in free societies. We're told that we live in democracies, and that's key. A democracy is self-governing people, where people govern themselves. And yet, it's not even denied that our prime ministers over the years and everybody else, military figures, they meet and discuss things in secret. We, the people, who are supposed to be governing ourselves, don't get to know the content of the conversations that are had in these, as it says, media-shy summits. Now, how can they pretend to us that we are self-governing free people when there are these top secret gatherings where we don't know what's plotted, but we're left to assume that it's matters military, matters financial. It's places like Bilderberg. There's a school of thought that says the Bilderberg Group is essentially the star chamber of the one world order. That the real decisions above the level of nation states, that the real decisions are made at the Bilderberg by the attendees at the Bilderberg Group. at the Bilderberg meetings, right? So that's what's meant in that opening paragraph in The Guardian about endless conspiracy theories.
And can I just quickly dip in there, Neil? So The Guardian is a serious newspaper, a broadsheet newspaper in the UK, and it's saying, here's this super secretive organisation that no one should know about, and it's terrible because people come up with conspiracy theories about it.
Yeah.
Isn't that a reason why people do that? Because
we're slapped down. Exactly. We're slapped down for being curious about what happens in there. But it's because we're not allowed to know what happens in there. So of course people are curious.
So the head spy from Britain has gone there.
The head of military intelligence. Yeah. And what's she just? Why was she given a presentation there? Was she what? Is she outlining tactically what's about to happen somewhere in the world? Who knows? But the questions are legitimate. And so, what is the whole top secret squirrel aspect of Western society? I think gives the lie to the notion that we are democracies and that we are free people and that we govern ourselves. Because quite plainly, if we're not allowed to know, ask yourself, why does it have to be secret? Who's it protecting? Because I don't think it's protecting us. But I don't think the secrecy protects us. I think the secrecy protects something else. But I mean, that's what. So you've got Trump as Jesus. You've got the head of MI6 attending secret squirrel meetings in Washington DC that we're not allowed to know the what happens there. On Sky News, I saw a clip of Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton saying that the UK is preparing a new version of a major plan to ready the whole nation, that's the United Kingdom of Great Britain, from the military and police to hospitals and industry for the transition to war, right? The head of the armed forces has told Sky News, that's Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton. He said the updated iteration of what was called the Government War Book would require people to think differently about resilience, drawing on lessons from the Cold War, but, quote, in a modern context, with a modern society, with modern infrastructure. So we're being readied for war. What war? Who are we going to war with? Again, I mean, the elections in Hungary have just ousted the 16-year sitting leader, Prime Minister Viktor Orban, and he's been replaced by a rival, Peter Magyar. And there's endless speculation about just exactly who Peter Magyar is, but he is now forming. He's got a supermajority in the Hungarian parliament. He'll be forming the government as prime minister, and surprise, surprise, he has even before his bottom is warming the seat of that job. He said that while Viktor Orban had for months been blocking a 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine, to Vladimir Zelensky, open brackets, without which the Zelensky regime cannot continue to function, close brackets, Orban had been blocking that loan. And surprise, surprise, he's gone. And Magyar has said, well, we won't be blocking that. We're not necessarily going to spend any Hungarian money ourselves, but we won't be blocking the bigger deal, which is the 90 billion euro loan to Vladimir Zelensky. Now, I watched the events unfold. Now, with the obvious caveat that I don't believe these political figures are actually what they purport to be. I believe the politicians that we're confronted with in Western countries are just factotums. They're just sock puppets mouthing the words prepared for them by the Bilderberg Group or whatever, or wherever the Star Chamber actually sits, the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, the Council for Foreign Relations, whichever of those elite groups actually runs the world. But nonetheless, I looked at what was unfolding in Hungary, and I was immediately reminded of the Maidan so-called revolution in Ukraine in 2014, which in 2014, the sitting, well, notionally democratically elected president in Ukraine was Viktor Yanukovych, who was spurning closer ties to Europe in favour of closer ties to Moscow, right? And famously, Victoria Nuland, who was the Assistant Secretary of State, I think, at the time, it was recorded in a telephone conversation with the US ambassador to Ukraine, who's a guy called Jeffrey Piat, and they were discussing who they were going to replace the Viktor Yanukovych government with, because it didn't suit America that the elected president in Ukraine was facing Moscow rather than facing, well, Washington. And obviously the EU is Russophobic. Ursula von der Leyen is champing at the bit to declare war on Russia. But America basically regime changed Ukraine. Viktor Yanukovych, the so-called Maidan Revolution, Yanukovych fled. I think he fled to Russia at the time, and he was replaced with a more, Europe, Washington friendly face. And then further down the line, eventually we got to Volodymyr Zelensky as the president of Ukraine. But it was at the instigation. Now that's what started the civil war in Ukraine. And it was 8 years of civil war that eventually provoked the Russian response that is now still playing out in Ukraine. What is it now? 6 years later. Okay. So that regime change, interference, someone that wasn't friendly towards, wasn't looking in the right direction, was mysteriously replaced. And in came somebody who was ready to, in the case of Magyar in Hungary, rubber stamp the 90 billion euro loan to Ukraine so that the EU can launder yet more money through that charnel house that murderous charnel house that we've all been invited to watch unfolding in Ukraine. So I'm just taking a scattergun approach to the things that are out there. This is what I mean when I say I don't know where to look next for the next, outrage or the next absolute jaw-dropping shocker that comes along. And it's in this context that I've said ad nauseum, that this is why I feel the need to have somewhere I can talk about these things and listen to ideas. And I know from the responses that people have made, so far to that idea of a hub, come talking shop, come whatever, the warmth with which that idea has been received. I know I'm not alone, but I refer you once again to that line. I am fully convinced 2019 was the last normal year we ever had. Hallelujah, brother.
And when you hear about all these things, in Ukraine and the laundering of these vast sums of money, and then you hear about these secret meetings with people who are saying, we're saving you, but you don't know about it. And then they worry about that you question it. It does seem odd that who is the woman who's running British Secret Service for the benefit of everyone?
Well, I mean, she's an interesting character. I mean, if you, if just for fun, if you put into a search engine of your choice, is Blaise Metrovelli related to a Ukrainian war criminal? Which was the leading question I asked, because I knew a thing or two, and the result that comes back is yes. Blaise Metrovelli, the head of Britain's secret intelligence service MI6, is the granddaughter of Konstantin Dobrovolsky, also spelled differently, a Ukrainian Nazi collaborator during World War II. Metrovelli's paternal grandfather was a local intelligence chief for the Nazi regime in Ukraine. He reportedly defected from the Red Army to join Hitler's forces in 1941. Wartime records uncovered in German archives indicate that Dobrovolsky, codenamed Agent Number 30, was known by some as the Butcher He is accused of participating in the extermination of Jews and mass executions of Soviet citizens. So that's got, I mean, obviously, the sons and daughters will not be prosecuted for the sins of the fathers, and the fathers and mothers will not be prosecuted for the sins of the children. You know, that's scripture. Nonetheless, it's an interesting backstory. And it reminds me, I mean, you know, my head spins with this stuff. The front man of Peter Thiel's Palantir company product in Britain is...
who are Palantir?
Palantir is the data gathering surveillance machine that gathers every bit of imaginable data about every citizen and collates it and uses artificial intelligence and whatever to, I don't know. It's like Santa's list. It decides if you've been naughty or nice. So Palantir is.
So he's a big US technocrat in a way.
Yeah, Peter Thiel's one of the techno oligarchs. Well, his front man, who's running the company Palantir in the UK, is Lewis Mosley, who is the grandson of Oswald Mosley. who ran the fascist Hitler sympathising party in the UK in the 1930s. You think it's two stones in a line is nothing, but 3 stones in a line is a wall. Yeah, you cannot help but wonder what on earth is going on. And that's before you start looking at the interconnectedness of all of these people. Once you start the kind of work that Whitney Webb does, the interconnectedness of all of the people in positions of power and positions of authority, they're all connected one to another. They're invariably related to intelligence services and the military. Fathers, mothers, grandparents, they come out of those military intelligence backgrounds, and they're all interconnected. And then people point fingers at something like the Bilderberg Group, or the Council for Foreign Relations, or the Trilateral Commission, or the Club of Rome, and they say, are these secretive elitist groups actually the fora for the real decision making that counts? And you're just roundly dismissed as a conspiracy theorist. But is it any wonder that people ask the questions that they do about these organisations? Because 5 minutes spent looking at any of the key personnel invariably raise legitimate questions. And so I'm ever more persuaded of the necessity for us to have each other to talk to, because if you're on your own in all of this, you do just feel as if you're going mad. You do feel as if you either are being deliberately driven insane, or that insanity is almost the inevitable consequence of knowing even a little bit about the infrastructure of the groups that are making the principal decisions about our lives. And here in Britain, the mood music is, and here in Europe, the mood music is that we're being taken to war with Russia, and that our children are going to get drafted into it at some point down the line. And the warm-up for all of that is going to be lockdowns to save energy. Because Iran, it's not our fault, it's Iran.
And do you see splits happening? Like the Pope and Donald Trump are having fisticuffs at the moment.
Again, I mean, this is what I mean. I mean, any one of these incidents on its own would be jaw-dropping. The Pope, the first American Pope, and he has had the temerity to call on Donald Trump to make peace in the Middle East. And Trump, the leader of the free world, the President of the United States of America, has gone all ad hominem on the Pope. He's gone after him on his own personal character and his own position as pontiff. It's unprecedented that a president of the United States would go after a figure like the Pope in the way that Donald Trump has. But in the world, the reality that we're handed at the moment is just another day in paradise.
And it's interesting that these big global issues and secretive and hidden away and we're doing it all for your own good. That's on one side, but a lot of the people on your Patreon side, they're concerned with that, but they're focusing on the small things as well. Like, Neil, I know prepping is a word that a lot of people are using, but Nicola is saying, I've had an allotment since 2022. An allotment is like growing your own veg in the UK. As I could see all this coming, I now have 3 allotments and 2 greenhouses and managed to feed us for most of the year. I also filled a can with petrol a couple of weeks ago, keeping it in a cool place. I mean, people seem to be getting ready in small ways as well as concentrating on what's going on in the big picture.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at just the comments under the last broadcast from here. I am 78 years old. I grew up in financial poverty but cultural richness. I learnt from my grannies to cook from scratch, patch, sew and knit. I learnt from granddad to garden. Reading, nature, study and painting were my recreation. Now I'm so grateful for that poverty. It has taught me to live a very happy, frugal lifestyle. I mean, we're definitely being nudged. There's clearly a determination to push everyone towards the kind of poverty in this country that most people thought was a thing of the past. But there's an inevitability about that. People are being pushed back into that. Now, I'm not saying it's a uniformly bad thing or a uniformly good thing, but it's interesting to notice that kind of frugality, back to the land, the willingness to grow some or all of your own food, to collect water in rain butts, to, all of that mindset is both a good thing because it makes us independent and self-reliant, but it's also a warning that we are being pushed back into a world that, of outside loos and that most people thought was gone. Don't get angry. That's exactly what they want. This is COVID 2.0, the Great Reset, Agenda 2030. Evil knows it's losing, which is why they're trying everything possible to stop what's coming. And trust me, it's going to be beautiful. Stay strong, all my brothers and sisters. Intelligent and sensitive people who are empathetic are finding the situation hard to deal with in this mixed up world. There's a very strong feeling to it of both determination, but also a kind of accepting an inevitability. And I do think there's an inevitability about hardship. It's just coming. It's impossible to say exactly what shape it will have, but there's going to be less fuel, less energy. There's going to be impacts on all the supply chains, including food. People living in big cities, for example, particularly where the supermarkets operate on that just-in-time philosophy, where they've only got a couple of days in the supermarket stores and it needs to be constantly replenished. And if that replenishment is not possible because of shortages of diesel for the trucks and all of the rest of it, well, that's going to have a very sudden, abrupt and shattering impact on people, especially in busy urban areas, where there are no people in flats in London. I don't suppose they've got, mountains of stored dehydrated food lying about ready to be, pulled into use.
I'll give you another one from your Patreon site.
This one, Paul, just exactly what I've been saying. I have been saying to my friends for the last 10 years, we, the people, are being forced into neo-feudalism. The elite have given us 150 years of so-called freedom, and now they're putting us back in the slave box where they think we belong.
Well, okay, and here's one from the Patreon site from Greg, who said, again, it's about prepping. I'm also learning to be a prepper. I grow my own garden, make my own liquor, grow my own dope. Now I'm teaching myself how to mill wheat so that I may at least have some fried bread for fresh pasta, etc. But bringing in, obviously, there's an illegal element there, but alcohol isn't illegal unless you're getting loads of it. But there's something about, quite often those things are for sharing and community and things like that. People do seem to be coming together in all sorts of ways, don't they?
Yes, they are. It'll be hugely variable. I mean, different people, everyone in their own part of the country will be having or will have different experiences of this. There are already communities before this. I mean, people for various reasons, many of them stretching back many years, have already been in the business of forging communities, establishing like-minded people that that share skills and share. I mean, I've mentioned before on here that I was made aware of a little while ago about a physiotherapist, a woman who lives by bartering, who lives by barter. So people will come to her and, she'll fix their bad back or whatever. And she gets paid in, eggs, or she gets paid in, a repair to a blocked sink in her kitchen. That's how she's, I mean, talk about, going back to cash. She's not even being paid in cash. She provides services in exchange for other people's skills, that she doesn't have. And a lot of people have established networks and connections in that way. And these are undoubtedly good things, whether there was trouble coming or not. We should be more in touch with and involved with communities. That should be the case, whether or not there was some kind of economic catastrophe coming that's going to affect everyone. One of the things I should mention as well, that there's a very obvious split on social media between those who think that Donald Trump and his administration, that it's madness, that it's panic-stricken chaos. And then there are those that say, no, it's 5D chess. It's an incredibly clever game that's being played by very astute people, okay? But let's say it is. Just for the sake of the thought experiment, let's say that at the end of all of this, the Western, like America, is going to be in control of resources. It's that the rest of the world is going to be dependent in some way on the United States of America for oil, gas. I don't know. That America is going to be in control of Mexico and Venezuela and Greenland and Canada. That it's some sort of very clever reset that's being shaped. Well, let's say that's true. It's being built on the corpses of civilians in the Middle East. It's predicated on the wholesale slaughter of civilians. Now, from a moral perspective, you cannot build anything to be proud of on the corpses of civilians. Now, people say, "Oh well, war's hell, and someone's got to do it." And at least Donald Trump is the man that's prepared to get the job done. So if they are playing 5D chess and if they are working towards something that benefits a group, well, there's no avoiding the fact that it's being built on the corpses of children.
But and those arguments about it's 5D chess, they're a bit like we're doing things in secret to protect you. It's sort of like we're doing things which is 5D chess, which you wouldn't be able to understand, but it's going to protect you. It's all thing. They're doing stuff that they're saying you don't know about or understand.
Yeah, you don't need to know this. You do not need to know this. Don't you worry your pretty little head about it.
Yeah, it's like a playground deal, isn't it?
Yeah.
I nicked your pocket money for your own benefit. Really?
I know.
Neil, thank you for another blast from this week's.
Everyone, keep replying, keep letting me know how you're doing. I read a lot more than I read out. I'm well aware of the zeitgeist of our channel and our shared information. And I know what I'm not even reading out 1% of what I've read. So keep them coming.